Now, joining us on the program from Gun Talk Radio, very pleased to have with us Mr. Tom Gresham. Tom, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good. Thanks for coming on the program this evening.
Oh, always a pleasure. We enjoy it.
Hey, this is such a cool story. We just celebrated the 100th birthday of Ronald Reagan, and you ran across an interview that your dad did with President Reagan back in '83. Is that right?
That's correct. It's and I well remember when he did it. It was a big deal. It's a one-on-one interview in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
Gresham, my dad, and it was ostensibly done for Sports Afield magazine, but it blew up and went a whole lot further than that.
So tell me about this. The one of the cool things about this interview that your dad did is President Reagan disclosed that he had an armed citizen story in his past.
Well, he did. And, what made it really fun was that I recently came across the original cassette tape that Dad had when he was recording this in the Oval Office. And I thought, back in '83, we had no way to widely distribute audio. And now with the Internet, we do. So why shouldn't we put this out? Because the story was out in '83 when it happened.
Yeah.
But basically, here's the story, and I kind of will combine what Dad wrote and also what he told me when he originally went in the Oval Office. And it took a lot of work, and actually it took the help of the NRA to make this thing happen. Ray Arnett was one of the people who actually made this all happen, which goes way back to the early '80s, and Ray Arnett be associated with the NRA, of course. He goes into the Oval Office, he gets out his tape recorder, and President Reagan says, well, if yours doesn't work, the ones in this office will. So right off the bat, he's having fun with it. And so it was Dad and President Reagan and the press secretary, Larry Speaks, in the room. And Dad had a few questions and all, and President Reagan starts talking about, well, it's good to have guns and all. And then he just, out of the blue, launches into this story about when he was a young sports broadcaster in Des Moines. It was a hot evening. He was upstairs in this apartment, and the apartment was across the street from a nursing school. And he heard this woman's voice say, just take whatever you want, but don't hurt me. And he said, well, I wondered, what should I say if I'm a witness and all? And then he went over to the window and looked out, and a man was holding a gun on this nurse out in the street. So at this point, in the Oval Office, President Reagan jumps up out of his chair behind his desk, and then starts acting out, like he's reaching with his gun. And Dad said at that point he realized, that's interesting. He's left-handed, because he was reaching with his left hand. He says he grabbed a 1911 pistol, Colt .45, 1911 pistol, and went over to the window and stuck it out the window. He didn't stick his head out. He just stuck it out the window so he could kind of peek, and he hollered out there, hey, you, drop the gun and get moving. He said this mugger turns around and looks up there at the window, and all he can see is the big bore of this .45 pointing down at him. And Reagan said, well, he didn't drop the gun, but he did take off running. So then the president said he leaned out the window and told the nurse, stay right there, I'll be right down. Then he put on his robe and went down and escorted her across the street to the nursing school. And he said to Dad, he says, I never did tell her I didn't have any ammunition for that gun.
That is awesome. Now, I think we've got the audio, I think, of this. Can we listen to this a little bit, Tom?
Go for it.
All right. Here is Ronald Reagan talking to Gresham in 1983.
When I was sports announcing in Des Moines, Iowa, and a friend, widow of a man that in the military, gave me his 1911 model automatic, .45 automatic. And I had an apartment right on the street, and next door to a hospital, and across the street a nurse's home. And I was on the second floor. And I was lying there half asleep, and I heard voices. And I was not paying much attention around the street down below, and it wasn't common to hear that, except that there was something about the tone. And I found myself saying, what if I were a witness, something had happened? What would I say I had heard? And just about that time, I heard her voice say, take anything but leave me alone. And I went to the window, and right beneath my window was this gal with her arms in the air, a suitcase sitting down there, and this fellow with a gun on her. She was a nurse coming back from a case. I got my 45. And I stood back. I'm up there in the dark window and put that 45 around it down. And I said, drop it and get going. And he rolled around with the gun, and so he couldn't see anybody, but he saw that 45 pointing at him, and all of a sudden he just turned and ran. He didn't drop the gun, he just turned and ran. And I told her, I said, wait a minute. I put on a robe and I went down. I didn't tell her that I didn't have any ammunition for the gun. But he didn't know that. And I took her over to the hospital and went back.
I love that story. And, you know, the amazing thing, Tom, I guess maybe not so amazing considering the adversarial relationship so many members of the press had with Reagan, but there were a lot of skeptics, a lot of doubters after Reagan told your dad this story.
They just said it was a lie. I mean, because, of course, this thing made national news, as you might imagine, and the media said, oh, it's not true. It can't be true. That's just another one of those Reagan stories. And then, out of the blue, this woman comes forward, and she says, no, that was me. And she said, I was a nurse. I was a young nurse then, and I remember it clearly. She says, I never knew who that man with the gun was who saved me. I didn't know he became an actor, and I sure didn't know he became the President of the United States. And they ended up arranging a meeting between her name was Melba King, and they had a meeting with her and the President, which, of course, as you can grasp, once again, the media is made to look like fools because of their bias. So it was kind of the perfect circular story. But you know, the other tag on this, Cam, is that President Reagan was born in 1911, and he used a 1911 pistol to save this woman. So in the year that we are celebrating his birthday and the anniversary of the 1911, we can talk about one of our presidents actually using a privately owned gun to save another person. That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. And, you know, I'll tell you the other cool thing about this story, Tom, is that in the wake of your dad's interview with Reagan, you know, as you say, Melba King, the woman that Reagan saved, got to meet Reagan for the first time. They kept up correspondence, and I guess the Reagan family actually helped her out when her husband passed away in '87. I mean, that kind of tells you a lot about who Reagan the man was, you know, outside of Reagan the president.
It really does. I actually found one of Dad's write-ups on this story, and we posted it over at guntalk.com. But I had somebody suggest something yesterday or day before I had not even thought of. He said, well, you've got the original tape of that. Don't you think that the Reagan Library would like to have that? I thought, well, yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but we're going to contact them and see if they would like to have the recording.
Oh, cool. That is awesome. Hey, Tom, I can't thank you enough for coming on the program and sharing this story. I think it is just it's a great way, again, to celebrate Ronald Reagan, celebrate the 100th anniversary of the 1911. And
there you go.
And rub it in the face of the mainstream media that, you know, once again, they were wrong about the Gipper.
Always seem to be. Hey, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Tom, as always, sir, and look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Take care.